radio stations will cleanse your listeners.
Somebody was saying on this whole issue, this conversation was a rather silly conversation last night, that it was something you owed your children because they couldn't possibly see you the next morning with a terrible headache that was of your own doing.
That's very true. That's very observant.
Keeps family harmony. Have a kebab. It's good to talk to you, Stuart. I've been too long. I'll speak to you soon.
You going to be on again?
Yes, but I'm not telling you where. Take care. Don't forget, one of the fascinating things about being born in the home of the brave and the land of the free is a motor car. And suddenly it was contagious, and everybody had one, all around the world. And then people realised you could tax them to absolute backseat proportions. And as they loved driving cars so much, they would give in. But now we find ourselves on the very edge of having remote control over speed limiters that are fitted to our vehicles, so that when we enter a particular zone, we can't be given the credibility of running our own vehicle. No. We have to surrender that. How much longer before we surrender the whole vehicle? And then you might turn around and say, so what's the point of it anyway? Well, somebody possibly hijacked the concept of the electric car. There was a film made about it. Who hijacked that? Somebody got onto the idea that we can keep on taxing people to drive their cars. There's a massive amount of cash generated from motorists. That's no great revelation, is it? But then we discover there are even more plans afoot, including reducing, in certain areas, the speed limit to 20 miles an hour. You might be saying, well, that's true in certain places already. Yes, it is. And in little tiny villages, I think that's absolutely correct, because you can drive around these U-bend corners at 30, totally legal, of course. But is it safe? No, it's not. Tiny little villages probably need tiny speed limits. But confusing people by changing the speed limits probably puts us in a position of being able to find people because of their confusion. I came round here on Tuesday and it didn't have one of these, but it's got one now. If you find yourself in that situation and you'd like to discuss that, my guest Paul Smith is here. He's the founder of the Safe Speed Road Safety Campaign. And we're going to be looking at that issue, the 20-mile-an-hour speed blitz on country roads. We're going to be looking at the concept of surrendering our vehicle over to a speed limiter. And maybe you'd like to talk about one or two of your own experiences in that area. The number? 08704 20 20 20. 08704 20 20 20. Whilst you're calling on that issue, I'm going to have a word with Wayne, who's in Newcastle. Wayne, good to have you on the programme. Good morning.
Morning, my first-time caller, but thanks for having us on.
That's great. What would you like to say?
If I may dive in, I'll try and keep each point brief, but your thing about limiting cars, the car I drive actually has a limiter that you can operate manually, and sometimes whenever I use it to stick to 30 limits, 40 limits, you get more grief from other drivers behind you for keeping to the limits. The second thing is, with all modern cars that are made now, they could actually have limiters in them. With sat-nav, they know what roads you're on, what speed you're going. But on the issue of speed is, my occupation, I fly aeroplanes, and as a pilot, we have to keep to certain speeds at certain times.
So you're a pilot?
Yes.
Right.
And it is increasingly difficult for us to maintain these limits. We have certain speeds to stick to. And they don't put autopilots on planes so we can have cups of coffee. They put them to lessen the workload and to maintain these speeds. And for anyone out there that doesn't know, once we're working on instruments to keep to speeds, we constantly have to look at the instruments to keep our heads down.
Keep your heads, that's a technical expression, heads down.
Yeah, we're looking at the instruments, we're watching the speed, how fast we're going. For example, with flaps, when you're on an airline, you'll see the flaps come down. There's certain speeds.
Right.
We will go above and below those set speeds by maybe so many knots. And it's human error, but it's not dangerous, but we do go over them. Now, how the hell can you maintain a set speed on the road if you're supposed to keep an eye out there? It's dangerous,
There was a very interesting article a short while back, Wayne, which you probably remember. It was in most of the major papers.
Yeah.
They were talking about selecting a lower gear to go with the speed limit. So in other words, say you've got 5-speed gearbox, manual gearbox, and you're doing 30, then you'd be best to keep it in 4th gear. And if you're doing 20, in 3rd gear, for example. It could even be 2nd gear. So, yeah, everyone follows that, of course. But then you start to realise that you're burning up more fuel. So then you're in this crisscross situation. You know, what's best for the environment? Well, put it in as high a gear as you possibly can, because you'll be driving on the torque pulling power of the engine and not burning off as much fuel. Or do you make sure you keep your licence and put it in 2nd gear?
I think as well, things you've got to look at, and I've got a few issues to raise, so let me know if I'm running out of time, so I can move to the most important one. But
I'm going to pull my guest on Paul Smith in just a minute, but that doesn't mean you can go, because I want him to comment on some of the things you've said.
Well, I'll just go on to one thing briefly there. When you talk about, they tell us to get out of our cars and, use car share. Besides our house, the most expensive thing we buy is a car. But when you go on to talk about speeding and the tickets, I've got a very good issue. And for anybody out there that's been affected by anyone that's been injured by speed, I do apologise, but this is fact. I do believe it's a hidden tax. And I, like a few other people that I've told about this, I personally have got off with 3 tickets. And I'm not condoning this, but this is something that happens. And I have great working knowledge of this from people I've spoken to. When you get done by speed camera, or maybe obviously they get your face or whatever, you get the disclaimer that comes with the thing that comes through the post. Most people go, damn, and sign it and send off the money. As soon as you've been zapped by that camera, it's printed off and sent out, it's a computer. So what I did I got done twice in one day, one of which I was doing 34, and another one I wanted to protest. I overtook a van that was going 25 miles an hour. I overtook and had to go obviously over 30 to get in front of it, and then I got zapped by a camera. And both of them, I thought, right, I'll challenge them. So I got the form. I sent it back with a letter saying, a number of people use my car. They're fully insured to do it, so they can do that. I've made relevant inquiries. I'm afraid none of them are admitting to using the vehicle. If there's anything else you require, please let me know. One of them, I never got a reply from.
That's very
The other one, they sent me a photograph in the post. This didn't come recorded delivery, because to do recorded delivery, to ensure that it's come to the person there, it costs money, £3 something, and man time. You can't do it automatically. You've got to go to a post office. Well, they haven't got the staff or the time, or the amount. Imagine if 5,000 people get done for speed on our roads every day. That's 5,000 lots of recorded delivery, staff hours, putting it in, writing the label, the £3 whatever it is recorded delivery. They haven't got that money. They just want your fines. And also,
I'm glad you haven't got this attitude when you're on your plane. You know,
No, I wouldn't do that. But I mean,
I hope not. I might be in the back.
No, at all. But the situation is, and if anything did come to your house, recorded delivery, and you weren't expecting it, don't sign for it, because that could be the picture. Or an officer of the law should come to your house and give you this picture. Now, there's a very good book in most men's car magazines or ladies' car magazines, and it's called the Driver Survival Handbook, and it's actually written by retired police officers. And I read that, and I've got off with 5 parking tickets. More recently, and this is my final point here, thanks for your time, I got pulled over, and it's wrong. I'm actually on the roadside now with a phone. But I got pulled over by a police officer because I was on my phone. He pulled me over, and I looked in my mirror. He cautioned me, and he says, have you got anything to say? I said, yes. You pulled me over for having a phone in my hand and one hand on the wheel. I'm sorry it's happened, but it's wrong. Fair enough. When you were following me, did you or did you not have your handheld radio in your hand, talking to it up to your mouth, with your left hand on the steering wheel? He goes, yes. I went, could you tell me the physical difference between what I did and what you did? He goes, not at all. I contested this in a court of law and did an example, and the police officer had to prove where his hands were, and it was thrown out of court.
Well, I think that serves to remind everyone who's got a BMW with an iDrive system that also should be banned along with mobile phones.
I think, yeah, seriously, I mean, the laws are there in place to protect somebody's safety, and we should remember the what if. When you do something wrong, you hit somebody or somebody hits you. Well, if you're on your phone and somebody hits you and they're in the wrong, they saw you on your phone and the police get the bill, then I'm afraid you haven't got a leg to stand on. The best thing is, with technology today, hands-free, whatever, just turn our phones off. But there's all these speeding things. More people are done for doing over 30.
Well, there's probably going to be something for you in just a moment when we talk to our next guest, Paul Smith. He's the founder of the Safe Speed Road Safety Campaign, and hopefully that will help not just yourself, Wayne, but a few other people. If you'd like to be part of the programme and have a chat with Paul, the number is 08 704 20 20 20. That's 08 704 20 20 20. Or you can text 81089, thank you, or through the website at talksport.net. Paul, good to have you on the programme. Good morning.
Good morning.
Fascinating to hear some of the experiences that people go through. You probably heard that last call. That's Wayne from Newcastle. Our reason for having a chat with you tonight is it's got two facets. One, the 20-mile-an-hour speed blitz on country roads to top up police coffers, say some, and also a new piece of kit which could be fitted to cars during manufacture or post-retrofitted, a speed limiter which would cut in when you enter a particular area and override your control of the accelerator. I would have thought that in some circumstances you would have to accelerate to get out of trouble. How does all this sit with you? What is your reaction?
I don't think accelerating to get out of trouble is a core issue. If we look at road safety as an overall system, we find that it depends absolutely on the vigilance, the skills, and the attitude of the drivers and the other people who are using the roads. If we do anything that changes skills, vigilance, or attitudes, then we could be making things much, much worse. If you put that in context, we have about 200,000 injury accidents in a year amongst 32 million drivers, and a simple division tells us that the average driver goes 150 years before he causes an injury crash. And we've got to look at what happens during that successful 150 years as well as what happens during the accidents that occur. And I'm afraid that's what government isn't doing at the moment. And that's what the Safe Speed campaign is urging them to do, demanding that they do.
Looking at those figures as you have and using them to find some reason as to why 115 years, was it, that they go without
150, 150 on average before an injury accident.
Does that have a bias to particular age range?
No, that's across the board. It includes complete nutters, it includes drunks, it includes joyriders in stolen cars, police drivers on emergency calls. That's the national average. 32 million drivers, 200,000 injury accidents. That's one injury accident per 150 driver years.
So how does this campaign to have a piece of equipment that reduces your involvement to nil when it comes to control over the accelerator on your vehicle, how does that sit with you?
Well, it's a really, really bad idea. If we go back to, let's go back to 1979. In 1979, Britain overtook Sweden to have the safest roads in the world. Through the 80s, we extended our world lead, and by the early 90s, we were about 30% safer than any other country, which is a really, really remarkable achievement. Then we had a change of road safety policy. We started saying the most important thing we need to do to make the road safe is control vehicle speeds. We will reduce speed limits, we will create humps, we will put in cameras, we will have new speed limit 20-mile-an-hour zones and so on. Since we've been doing that, road accidents haven't been falling as expected. We haven't had the reduction in fatalities that we expected. In 1994, we had 3,800 road deaths a year, and now we're down to 3,500 2 years ago, 3,200 now. If we'd followed the previous track in terms of road safety improvements since 1994, we'd be under 2,000 road deaths a year by now. So we're at least 1,200 lives a year between the expectation that anyone would have had
I can
15 years ago.
imagine certain people in ministries must be wincing at the fact that you're on the air now talking about this.
I do quite a lot of it, actually.
Yes, exactly. But I was just thinking, a guy like yourself that puts statistics up under the microscope and also puts them across so clearly and succinctly must be a major irritation to the powers that be.
The problem is that since they've got on this speed kills track, the only thing we need to do to make the road safer is slow people down. It hasn't worked. It's damaged the police-public relationship. Drivers are getting worse, according to Transport Research Laboratory, who were asked to try and determine why this is happening. Well, of course drivers are getting worse. We're giving them the wrong road safety information. We're telling them to concentrate on the wrong safety factor. We're not helping them develop their skills. We're not policing the roads properly. I mean, this should be pretty obvious by now. But of course, Department for Transport and all the camera partnerships around the country have got huge resources, and they're just stuck on these rails. Let's go this way. This is the way we do it. This works. But all the evidence is going against them. Every new bit of evidence that comes along goes against them. We've recently had, published in the British Medical Journal 4 or 5 weeks ago, they've looked at hospitalisation statistics from road accidents. And what they've discovered is that hospitalisations from road accidents have not fallen for 10 years. No reduction whatsoever. But we know we're putting safer cars on the roads every year. We know we're engineering out problems at black spots and we're getting traffic onto bypasses and out of villages. We know that we're getting better at post-crash rescue and medical care. And these factors, historically, have resulted in a regular and reliable reduction in road risk values. Now, we're not getting those regular and reliable reductions anymore, and there's a reason. We've got the wrong policy.
Right. We'll find out what the right policy will be, or what you suggest would be our way of looking at it in just a moment. And we're going to be calling Keith into the conversation. If you'd like to be part of this yourself, we're talking about motor cars. We're talking about the attitude we walk around with. Well, it's a received attitude, and there's no reason why we shouldn't question it. If you'd like to be part of it, it's 08704 20 20 20, or you can just listen if you want. 08704 20 20 20. Or you can come through the website at talksport.net. If you've got a burning question and looking an answer to be found, I'll do my absolute best to speak on your behalf. Failing that, you can text me on 81089. I'm Mike Allen. This is TalkSport.
TalkSport, the radio station where men are men and sheep can sure run fast.
Oi, Vicky!
Award-winning radio for full-blooded blokes across the UK on 1089 and 1053 AM.
Dirty.
And the technological miracle that is DAB digital radio.
You're dead, brilliant, fantastic.
TalkSport.
Thanks for your messages and emails. There's one here from Tonbridge. I think it's Sue in Tonbridge. Hello, Sue. She says, is it really you? Bloody hell. Welcome back. Thank you. A caller earlier on mentioned, this is somebody else's words, not mine, the First World War, said we were lions led by donkeys. Wrong. It was worse than that. We were led by politicians and donkeys elected them. Thank you, Jim. And a note from Will in Islington. He said, I can't believe it's Mike Allen, a voice from another time and place. Fantastic. I hope this is regular. Mike, nice to hear your voice. It must be 15 years. No, I think I sound about 17 by now, don't you? One or two things have dropped. I think this chair's going a bit wonky. We're talking about cars, we're talking about raising revenues, we're talking about safety, and we're talking, bizarrely, with Paul Smith about amazing statistics that speed kills is up for discussion. We're also talking about a speed limiter concept which could be installed in your car from new that would surrender your control over its acceleration into the hands of a computer, going through certain areas. How safe do you feel about this? My number, by the way, should you want to call me, would be a perfect position to put yourself into a conversation with Paul Smith. The number is 08704 20 20 20. So Paul, joining us to talk a bit about his own adventures in the land of the speeding ticket is Keith, who's currently in a car at the moment. Hello, Keith.
Hello.
Hello. I hope you've pulled over, have you?
Yeah, it's hands-free. It's one of these hands-free ones in a truck, it is, actually.
Oh,
so
top man.
Quite safe. Yeah. I'm on the M4 at the moment, funny enough. Is it Paul now I'm talking to?
Yeah, hi.
Yes, Paul Smith.
Yeah, hi, Paul. Talking about these limiters, these trucks have all got limiters, as you might know. They're 56 limited.
Indeed.
So, I mean, talking about I heard the pilot talking about having to worry about when he's driving the car, about looking down and checking his speed, etc. You can imagine doing that with 44 ton all the time. It's something we've got to do regular. I mean, even though we're limited to 56, we've still got to cut our speed down when we're going down hills and stuff. You know, we got the air brakes and we got the engine limiters. So we've got to keep checking our, we've got to keep looking up and down all the time on our clocks. And you can imagine the carnage weaker cars if we took our eyes off the road too long. But like I said, these have been out a long time, these limiters, so why they're not put on cars automatically, I don't know. The other thing I wanted to be on about the speed limits. I can never understand why we're limited at night. I drive nights. I've been on nights now for 2 years. And everywhere I go, you seem to get cars breaking, especially on the M4, 50 miles an hour during the day, etc., etc. But in the night, there's not a soul around, and I've been done for going 4 miles over, flashed by a camera. On a country road, there's not a soul around.
What was the speed limit shown at the time? 30?
40. It was 40 with a truck, I understand that, but I was flashed doing 44. I was just crept over it. Again, the weight took going down towards, don't know where the hell it was. But I mean, because I went over 4 miles an hour on a country road, completely deserted, 2 o'clock in the morning, I had a £50 fine and 3 points on my licence, which I thought was well excessive. I did mention it in the letter, but they wouldn't accept that.
Well, hang on a minute, Keith. I want to bring Paul in on this because a lot of guys are under the impression that there is a 10% margin of error. Now, is that true, Paul?
Yes, generally.
So we're talking about a borderline case here with Keith.
I think he's probably been done for 47 or more, haven't you, Keith?
No, it was 44.
Unusual.
4 miles over, that's
Unusual.
So is it worth looking? Is it worth following up and seeing if there could be some redress on this?
It's always worth following up every ticket at the moment. The way things are going, there are a lot of opportunities for following them up. The first thing is, when you get the notice in the post, it says you have 28 days to reply. That is a gift. 28 days is a very substantial gift. Take that time to do your homework. Don't be in a rush to send the form back. There's plenty of free resources on the internet. You do not need to go out and buy books of tips and advice. All the advice is there on the internet. So, use the 28 days to do your homework and see if you've got a way of fighting that ticket.
When you say use the internet, I mean, are there 1 or 2 addresses we could make a note of?
I guess the site that I maintain, the campaign that I run, is at safespeed.org.uk. That's mainly about the relationship between speed and safety and how skills, attitudes and responsibilities are the core of road safety. There's a site that's concerned with motorists who are coming into contact with this system trying to get justice, and that's the pt.5 website, pt.5.com.
You serious?
Absolutely. It's a very substantial resource, the pt.5 website. Very substantial resource.
It's not a serious business name, though, is it? You don't have to comment. You don't have to comment on that.
These things have grown up because motorists have found themselves in conflict with the system in one way or another, and they band together. It may not start off as anything that's particularly important or serious. The Safe Speed campaign, I started it as a hobby activity in 2001, intending to try and find out why people who were committing very minor speeding offences risked losing their driving licence, which risks you losing your job, which risks losing your home and your family. I mean, these can be a disastrous thing.
There was a movie I saw a little while back, and the guy made the point. He said there isn't one of the guys who is regularly working on a job, that 3 months of unemployment would render him unacceptable and on the street. And if you stop and think about it, and I think it's a very important point you've made there, Paul, it's reducing the chance of your children having a good education because you're not at work.
Yeah.
it possibly challenges the ongoing situation of one's marriage or relationship. All these things which are not immediately apparent, but are all depending on you being in regular employment.
Yeah, absolutely. So real bad knock-on effects. You know, if speeding tickets mount up, then life-changing effects. And I thought, well, you know, that doesn't really seem like justice when you start off with an offence that's technical in nature, relatively minor, and it ends up with life-changing consequences. So, having set up this website, I started using my skills as a professional engineer of 25 years' experience to look into the government case. And I was absolutely horrified at what I found. Every time I turned over a stone, I found worms. They were misusing bits of data. They were misrepresenting their own science. They had science based on, they still have science based on flawed foundations. But the whole speed kills approach to road safety doesn't work. We're shooting at the wrong target. Road safety isn't a matter of vehicle speed, it's a matter of road user psychology. And until we wake up to the fact that we are entirely dependent on the skills, the attitudes and the sense of responsibility that road users bring to the task, we will not be able to improve road safety. We're just completely barking up the wrong tree, and all the while we're barking up the wrong tree, we're missing the opportunity to save lives on the road.
Let's hold it there just for a moment and thank Keith for his contribution. Keith, is there not an organisation that acts and speaks for you, a union organisation or something?
Yeah, I have approached the union about it, but apparently, I mean, we're responsible for speed, and I can understand with a truck, you know. But I think it's totally. My point is, I don't know if Paul hasn't answered that. Is why are we restricted at night when there's not a thing about? You know, it's just crazy. I can understand during the day when there's a lot of traffic, children, you know, in school, etc., etc. But at night there's not a soul around, and we're restricted as, you know, we got the same restrictions all through the night, and it just don't make sense to me. Same as the motorways. We've got the same speed limits when there's not a thing on the road, and lots of people have questioned this, and they never had answers for it.
Well, what are your thoughts on that, Paul?
Well, I mean, Keith is highlighting something that's absolutely fundamental to the process of road safety and the process of driving. Actually, the speed in miles an hour doesn't tell you the safety. What you need in order to determine the safety is whether or not the speed is appropriate to the immediate conditions. When conditions are clear, when conditions are good, when your vehicle's capable, then higher speeds are sensible. And we know this as drivers. If we go from A to B, we continuously and effectively and necessarily adjust our speed in accordance with changing conditions. Every time you come to stop traffic, you slow down. If there are hazards, you slow down. In fact, this is the essence of driving. You look out of the windscreen, you recognise hazards, sources of potential danger, and you adjust your driving to suit the hazard environment. And if you didn't do that, you wouldn't be able to go 5 minutes without crashing, let alone 150 years. So when Keith says, why do the speed limits apply at night? Well, I think there are practical and expedient reasons why it's actually fairly difficult to specify speed limits that change during the day and during the night. But the problem here is not that the speed limits don't change. The problem here is that we're going absolutely bonkers about trying to make them a central part of road safety, when really the speed limits they're useful to us if we apply them intelligently and use them against those people who are behaving carelessly with speed, recklessly. And there are some, but we need to recognise who they are. And of course the cameras and speed limits that apply the same under all weather conditions, under all traffic conditions, over the whole length of a section of road, they just can't do that. I mean, it's pretty absurd, really. And that's where we come into conflict with the whole speed limiter idea. 56 miles an hour for a truck on a motorway is one thing. Imagine trying to drive through a town situation at a constant 30 miles an hour. You're going to come into considerable difficulty with other traffic for a start, because that's not what the nature of driving is. The nature of driving is that we're continuously adjusting our speed to accommodate the needs and behaviours of other road users and the demands of the hazard environment. So the whole idea that you can stick your foot on the floor and leave it to the satellite to take control of your vehicle, I'm a bit concerned about that.
Keith, good to hear from you. I do wish you well. Be lucky. Thank you, my friend. If you'd like to be part of the programme, we're talking to Paul Smith. We're talking about a different approach, a different attitude to statistics and how they could alter our take on the future of driving. Yeah, we're going to expand on that in just a sec. If you'd like to be part of the programme, it's 08704 20 20 20, 08704 20 20 20. As I mentioned, it's Mike Allen in for Mike Mendoza, and Dion from Purfleet said, is it true that Mike injured his arm whilst he was counting his money? Thank you very much. Of course it's wholly true. So, Paul, I had an email from a listener who said, I agree with everything Paul says, but nothing ever gets done. It's all just talk. That's Steve, as in Croydon. Is there some way we can accelerate your attitude up to people who can make decisions that would change and, in other words, be perhaps a little more enlightened?
Well, resources for the Safe Speed campaign are important. It's something that the members are talking about at the moment. You can join as a website, join the website as a member. There's a link on the front page at safespeed.org.uk.
What would be a benefit of being a member apart from giving you their support? I mean, probably so.
Well, it isn't that great at the moment. The way this has grown up.
I want you to talk this up a bit, you know.
Well, I probably shouldn't I?
I think you should.
I'm so focused on the road safety thing that I actually find it quite difficult